Hello and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown podcast. I am joined again with Chris as we do our Week 3 review from the Championship. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be back.
So I think we'll crack straight into the action with the first game we're going to speak about, which was one of the early kickoffs on the Saturday. Hull City 0, Blackburn Rovers 3. First of all, we have to mention that Hull had apparently an illness ravaging through the camp, which took players like Charlie Hughes out of the game for the afternoon. But nonetheless, a 3-0 defeat is a big loss for Hull City after what looked like a positive start to the season. So what are your thoughts on this one, Chris?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, they had chances to score early on and didn't take them in the first 20 minutes. And I think if you're not going to settle into a game in the first 20 minutes, it sort of sets the tone for how your day is going to be on the day. If you can't finish your chances early on, then you're probably not going to take them late on, sort of thing. It does feel like a slight excuse. I know illness is illness and everyone misses players. I don't think there's a single week you're ever going to have your full strength side anymore in today's game. No matter what level you're playing at, you're always going to be missing someone. It does feel like a slight excuse. Is it a reason? Yes. Is it 100% the reason? No.
Yeah, Ryan Hedges had a good performance yesterday for Blackburn. We focus on more of the positive side for them. Goal and assist for him. Todd Cantwell bearing the armband for the first time with the news that Lewis Travis looks set to join Derby. Gets a goal, and then Ohashi as well with the third. I'm looking at the whole team. Also, they had McCarthy in centre back, which was his first game, I believe, for the club. It's a nice young prospect for them. Didn't look. I say they were 3-0 loss. It's hard to judge a defender too much on their first game. It's a bit harsh, but 90 minutes under his belt, it's not a bad thing. But yeah, I don't know. It just didn't seem like the Hull we'd seen in the opening two games, where they, a decent point on the road to Coventry and then a win last week as well. So it's an intriguing one because I think a lot of us in our predictions, we backed Hull to win this game. I think you were the only one who said otherwise. I think, or someone did someone backed Blackburn to win this one, but they were the only one. I think as Charlie Hughes is obviously going to be a massive loss when you're Hull City. He's one of the better defenders in the Championship. We've already seen huge bids come in from a Coventry, looking at more than £10 million for him. But they value him around 20, so yeah, it's intriguing. But as far as Blackburn go, it's better. They needed a win. It's obviously their first point of the season coming in game 3. Not ideal, but it's points on the board nonetheless. And I think they need to crack on now, and Hull need to do their best to bury this one before next week.
Yeah, home results are vital in no matter what division you're in, and getting points on the board at home early on is a huge thing for any side. But when you're Hull and you're probably going to be down the bottom end of the table fighting to survive, it's even more important. So to lose this one is a massive loss for them. Bigger than the loss it actually is on paper, really.
100%. So it's hard to judge stuff like that so early, but as you said, these are teams that we're not expecting to be at the top end of the table. So, you've got to get these wins while they're there and ready for you. Moving on to, this has to be the highlight, and I think anyone talking about the Championship this weekend will be talking about this one. Coventry 7, QPR 1. Now, I think that says more than it, anything could do about exactly what happened in this game. But 7 goals for a QPR team that's been so highly tipped with some brilliant signings such as Richard Kone, Kwame Poku, etc. Obviously missing some of them, but still 7 goals. I think it was Hadji Wright had 2, Jack Rodoni had 2, Victor Torp had 2, and Brandon Thomas Asante had 1 as well. Kone did get a consolation goal at the end. But, Chris, 7 goals. Brilliant result for Coventry, but QPR must have some huge question marks after that.
Yeah, I actually backed this as a high-scoring game. I think I had this as a 6-goal game. I think 4-2.
You had 4-2, yeah.
I think Coventry are going to be that team that are going to be absolutely unpredictable this season. Dark horses, I'd certainly put them as so far this season, just going off early form. The table's a bit upside down lately. But one thing I'll say is we didn't have this from Coventry on our predictions after the first week. the first week they couldn't finish their chances against Hull, and now they've had 16 goals in 2 games. Like, we've had 2 8-goal games back to back now, which is unbelievable. You're obviously asking massive question marks of your defence of QPR there, but a huge win on paper for Coventry. It sets the tone early, which we know is something they don't do very often as well.
Yeah.
Normally, we're seeing Coventry struggle in the early stages of the season and then come to form. This time around, they've come out solid, and it shows the type of manager Frank Lampard is and how well suited he is to this level.
Yeah, 100%. For me, the one thing I did want to focus on is the expected goals from this game, because albeit they put 7 in the goal, obviously, if people have their opinions on expected goals, their expected goals was just 1.27, and they scored 7 times. So I don't know who you're asking questions of more here. Maybe the QPR goalkeeper Walsh letting in 7 goals with that little expected of them to go in. It's very interesting to see how that even happens. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that before. I will also say as well, a fair play to Ryan Colley from QPR for, I don't know if you've seen it, but a video of him going over the barriers and speaking to the fans up close and personal. At 20 years old, it takes some bottle to go do that after getting absolutely plastered 7-1 away, after travelling all the way to Coventry to see that. It takes some bottle to go and do that. It's fair play to him. But I mean, yeah, just question marks over the goalkeeper there for me. Like, letting in 7 goals off that little expected goals. I know, obviously, as I said, people have their opinions on how expected goals and what they think of it, but it surely proves something that goalkeeper's not had the best games, safe to say. But yeah, Coventry were just brilliant. As you said, after that first game against Hull, it looked like they were going to be a bit of a weird team this year, and then they come out with a 5-3 win and a 7-1 win. So, definitely leading the goals scored chart after 3 matches, already plus 8 goal difference. But yeah, 100% for me. My big question mark is really how on earth they've managed to score so many goals from such little expected of chances.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about if Coventry are going to keep this up is it all depends on what type of movement you're going to see in the Premier League. Because the one thing I'd absolutely back to happen in the Premier League is they did win at the weekend, Brentford, and I won't go into too much detail on them because obviously this is a Championship podcast. We have our own Premier League podcast. But as we're talking about Frank Lampard, I'll say it here, that if Brentford were to part with Richards by Christmas and results haven't gone their way, I could absolutely see Frank Lampard being the next Brentford manager.
Yeah, I remember you saying about this. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, obviously, there's going to be movement. I think as well, concerningly for Coventry, Jack Redoni's been subject to a lot of interest. I think Southampton were in for him, but I think they may be able to wave that one away for this transfer window. They're not a club short of cash. They don't need to sell, I don't think. I've not seen anything where they've said they need to sell to bring players in. Obviously, Van Ewijk is going out the door for what looks about £10 million. So that should cover any of their sales that they need to do this summer. So I think that should compensate the Redoni sale. And obviously, they've got King Hayden already at the club to just slot in and replace Van Ewijk straight away. So I don't think it's too bad of a thing. Obviously, he's a great player, but you also have a great player sat there waiting to step into his place. So yeah, Frank Lampard for me, I think I had my concerns when he got into the job because his track record, as we said, seemed to be severely underperforming with certain teams. Like, obviously, Chelsea wasn't as good as he wanted it to be in Derby. You probably think that team should have got promoted if you look back in hindsight with the quality of players he had there. But I can 100% see a team in the Premier League moving for him if Coventry keep their run of form up and a Premier League team starts to struggle quickly. Like you said, Brentford, for example, could be definitely a target for them. But yeah, I think for me, it's just what a win for Coventry. I think it just has to be said, but more anything else is 7 goals this week, 5 goals last week. It's safe to say teams are going to be scared of playing Coventry in the coming weeks with that kind of goal scoring record.
I still think, just going on to Lampard's time at Derby, I still think that Coventry have hit a ceiling with him. In the sense of, it's just from his time at Derby, I think that Derby side, you look at the names he had, like Mason Mount and so on, I think not winning that playoff final was a massive failure and is the biggest blemish on his resume. I don't think he's the type of manager who can take you through a playoff charge. We saw it again last season where they lost in the playoffs to Sunderland, albeit Sunderland were the team who went up. But I also don't think Coventry are the type of team who are ever going to be backed enough to go up automatically. I think the only way Coventry would ever go back to the Premier League is through the playoffs, and I don't see Lampard being a playoff winning manager just going off his time at Derby.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Obviously, as you said, the only thing we can base it off is his previous playoff experience, and that is not winning any of them. So I'm intrigued to see how they get on for the rest of the season. Now, with this sort of goal scoring form, they're not going to be able to maintain scoring as many goals every game. You know, they will slow down. But the fact they have that thing in their locker to do it 2 weeks in a row is not a lot of Championship teams have that sort of quality in the attacking areas to be able to go and score that many goals. So I think if they crack on, then as I said, it will all depend on the playoffs. And as you said, if Lampard can get over the hump of his last 2 playoff results, then maybe they have an outside chance of Premier League promotion. But with so much quality in this league, so it's definitely going to boil down to just pure management quality and player quality when you get into the playoffs. So it'll be intriguing. But as I said, that's a very long time away. So I'm sure we'll find out later in the year. Moving on to my team, Swansea City, and our 1-1 draw at home against Watford. Most of us on the podcast, we did sort of expect a draw. I went a bit ambitious with a 2-1 win. I think a few people followed suit with Swansea edge out a narrow win, and not to be. I have to say, although I'm a Swansea fan, that free kick from Nestor Renkunda was absolutely brilliant. One of the best goals I've seen so far this season, 100%. Then Swansea levelled it late on, thanks to Zambi Potnik in the 83rd minute with a nice little header. And then there was a little bit of controversy after the game. A lot of Swansea fans not particularly happy, especially me, with the way Watford conducted themselves towards the end of the game. A lot of time wasting, a lot of injury faking, and this game management. There's not much you can do about it, but it wasn't exactly fun to watch for the last 15 minutes when you're trying to win a game of football and they're falling over every 5 seconds. I think there's only about 3 yellow cards brandished, but the ref had to add on 9 minutes, and it was mostly from just them time wasting from 83 to 90. So it's an intriguing one, but yeah, for me, it was just a lack of quality in this game in the attacking areas in general. I think they looked dangerous. Figueroa made a great save from Kieran Gard earlier in the first half, I think it was, and then obviously, Aaron Gunda buries a very, very nice free kick. But Swansea still yet to concede from open play this season after 3 games, both the goals coming from set pieces. So I don't know about you, Chris, but I think just a game that didn't have all too much quality in attack.
Yeah, you're both 2 sides who are very much stuck in limbo. I know I boldly backed you for a playoff push after your summer recruitment, but ever since you both came down for a Premier League, you just both seem to be stuck in limbo. Watford even more so. You're always down the wrong end of the table, really, and I don't think your squads represent being down the bottom end of the table. Just going on to game management, the time wasting rule is something that massively needs changing in football. A referee's never given a second yellow for time wasting, and a player knows that. And as a referee, when you're coming up to a player and giving them a yellow card for time wasting, you're essentially coming up to them and saying, "Don't do it again, because I can't do anything about it if you do it again," sort of thing. And it's just sort of like, well, okay, I'm going to do it again because you've done all you can do about it now, so I may as well just keep doing it. So it massively needs changing in football, and everyone knows that, and for the most part, everyone exploits it.
Yeah, it was just tedious to watch. Like, you're in a game where obviously, they know they're on the back foot, conceding goal 83rd minute, the momentum massively shifts towards us at that point. And we were really pressing for that second goal. But, there's just so much breakup in play. And as you said, there's not really any punishment for it. They might pick up a few yellow cards or whatever. But just stuff like injuries and then, the referee forcing the physios to come on to actually come and check them out, because otherwise he knows they're faking it and he's just going to start brandishing cards for faking injuries at some point, because the players, there was one clip of Sissoko actively waving the physios away while the ref was waving them on to come and help them out. So I think it's an interesting one for me, how you look at that situation. But for us, I've said it all window. I've said it all every episode we've spoken about Swans. We need a striker desperately. Vipotnik was good. gets the goal when he comes off the bench. But at the same time, I just think we need more up front. Liam Cullen cannot play in the number 9 for us anymore. It's getting to a point where I'm not really seeing what Alan Sheehan sees in him to start him up front. But yeah, hopefully we sign a striker because I think that's our one big weakness. I don't really think we're too weak in any other areas. We'll say Ethan Galbraith got his 3rd man of the match for us in back-to-back games, so it's very impressive how good he's been so far this season. I can't speak highly enough of him. As far as Watford go, I was impressed by a few players, but I just think there's just a lot to be desired with Watford in many areas. I think they're fine. They're a good side. It was just such an even, sort of boring game in a way that I don't think there's too much to say about it really. But yeah, for me, interesting one for Swansea and Watford. Just obviously they have their striker, but we definitely need to sign a striker, I think.
Yeah, and I know they've only just gone up and they'd be managing their squad, but I'd absolutely say I could see you taking a punt on getting Perot back on loan, just because I don't think he'd cut it in the Premier League, and I think he's also someone Leeds are aware of that with. But I know it wouldn't happen, but I could absolutely see that being a punt that you take, just because for me, I don't think he cuts it in the Prem.
Yeah, a few of our fans mentioned that one. Obviously, with Leeds bringing in a few strikers, it's be intriguing to see where he ends up if he stays with Leeds, because he did start the first game, I believe. But obviously, they've brought in a few strikers now, so it'd be interesting to see if he becomes available. I feel like, as I said, if it was to be available, it would be a loan down back to the Championship, and we might be stupid not to even look at that if we're getting to the last few days and there's not much in it. I mean, there were some questions about his treatment of how he left and stuff like that. I think he kissed the Leeds badge when he scored against us in the first game after he left, so that was an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, he's a quality striker, and we haven't replaced him since he left, so it'll be intriguing to see if that move become possible. I doubt it very much, and I think we can probably do better. But as you said, the top scorer last season, if he becomes available, you probably should take a punt on that. So we will find out soon. Next up, Norwich versus Middlesbrough. It was a 2-1 win for Borough, which means they maintain their perfect start to the season. I believe only them and Stoke are the two teams to have 3 wins from 3 to start off the year. Borough, I believe that is the first time they've conceded this season as well, after a big win away at Millwall and beating Swansea on the opening day to 0. Norwich, though, I mean, this is a team that, as you said about Swansea, I backed Norwich as sort of an outsider to finish into the playoffs, and they've really not started in the form that looks like a team that's going to be going into the top 6, you have to say.
I can't actually remember where I put Norwich in my predictions now. I didn't back them to have a strong season just because of who they've lost. Borja Sainz left, players like that. They'd lost Jonathan Rowe before that, obviously, but Borja Sainz was a player that was never going to be replaced at this level. And you look at what he did for Norwich as well. I know, and that goes to show on both arguments of you putting Norwich for a playoff push, but me also saying that they're not going to perform to the level they have been, because last season he'd scored 15 by November?
Yeah, something like that. And then he just didn't score much at all, did he?
Score for 4 or 5 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, something ridiculous. I think he was suspended for 8 games, but still.
But I think that goes to show on both of our points of where we put Norwich, that I guess you could argue that Norwich could do it without him for the fact that they basically did, because he just shut up shop after 15 goals. But then, yeah, so I'd absolutely put them for a bottom half finish this season. Borough have took me by surprise. I didn't see them coming out strong this season, but they seem to have defied everyone.
Yeah, I mean, there's some brilliance. I mean, obviously, we saw the other day that Hans van Nijpen has signed for Borough. Really, really highly known prospect who just signed for Manchester City, of course. So he came off the bench in this one, I believe, for about 20 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too particularly keen on Rob Edwards at Borough. I just, obviously, after the Luton sort of, disaster, you have to say, you can't really put it any lightly after the promotion to get relegated. It's a tough one to take. But I wasn't too keen on it, but that Borough squad, I'm just looking at it, and there's so much quality in it. You know, if Hayden Hackney is to stay, you then put him in the midfield with Aidan Morris. They've still got Finn Azaz, who has been, I believe, subject to a couple of bids from elsewhere in the latter stage of this window. So it'll be intriguing to see where he goes. But, you know, even like, you know, sort of pickups that no one really spoke about. Alfie Jones has been excellent in their first 3 games. Luke Ayling has been a man reborn in these first couple of games under Rob Edwards. I can't believe how good he's been so far. He was brilliant against us, and he was brilliant against Norwich as well. You know, Tommy Conway, we know, scores goals at this level, so it's no surprise that he got another one here. I think on Norwich's side of things, you know, a silly mistake from Jacob Wright doesn't help getting a red card when you're already in the situation. But Josh Sargent goal, it'd be intriguing to see if they can keep hold of him, because he said they've already lost Sainz to lose Sargent as well. Could be shattering for their hopes this season. But it's a good Norwich side, but I don't think it's as good as I thought it would be going into the season. And I don't think Liam Manning is performing to the levels that I expected him to, compared to obviously last year, where he dragged a pretty average Bristol City side into the playoffs when no one expected it. So for me, I think Borough, as much as there's so much quality in that side, it's nice to see that they've got a manager who can go on and use that quality really well.
Yeah, like you said, 100%. I think the table's a bit upside down with the teams up there. I don't think anyone predicted things to be how they were. And at the start of the season, we said about teams like Southampton walking this league maybe after coming down, and they've made life hard for themselves. And then Sheffield United are where they are in the league. So this seems to be another case of the Championship is anyone's for the taking this year, if the first 3 games are anything to go by, which more often than not, it's not the case. But I don't think you've seen a season start like this in a long time, where everyone's just come out the gate strong who shouldn't, and then the teams who should be coming out the gate strong are struggling.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, as you said, we had teams like Ipswich and Southampton absolutely steamroll in this division, and Southampton with 4 points, and I believe Ipswich have 2 after their first 3 games. So Ipswich currently actually 18th, yet to win after 3 matches. Southampton's only win came against, you have to say, is a fairly average Wrexham side at the minute as well. So it's a weird one, as you said. It is a bit upside down. You look at some of the teams in the top 6. Well, again, you want to put Preston and Stoke as 1st and 6th after 3 matches, albeit it's still very early. But yeah, I think Borough just need to keep playing the way they do. They've always been a team that's in and around that playoff conversation. Maybe a couple of years they've just been a bit off what they expected, but there is more than enough quality in that Middlesbrough side to be pushing for a playoff spot this season at least, because the talent is literally, especially in the midfield. I mean, Hayden Hackney, Naipan, Azaz, Morris, all in the same midfield is insanity for the Championship. And if they can keep hold of all of them somehow, then they're going to have a really, really good shot, I think, going for the playoffs. Yeah, go on. You good?
I just want to point out that I put this Preston side to go down.
Yeah, well, speaking of Preston, as they are the next team we're going to speak about, so we will go straight into that, because yes, you did predict them to go down, and none of us predicted them higher than about 17th, I don't think. Preston 1, Ipswich 0. So a team that you put in the top 4 has lost to a team that you thought would get relegated. So certainly an intriguing one. But Preston, I mean, back-to-back wins against 2 teams that people felt would be competing to win this division. I don't even know like anyone who would have even expected or even thought that was a possibility. But a 2-1 win at Leicester, and then a 1-0 win at home to Ipswich, obviously back-to-back wins at Deepdale as well. I mean, there's not much to say really, apart from Preston are on a brilliant run of form to start the season.
Yeah, and it draws some worries about the teams who are expected to be up there and how they're handling pressure. I don't think Ipswich so much, but Leicester's squad has a lot of uncertainty around it of who's staying, who's going still. So I think that's playing a factor in the results on the pitch as well for them. But Preston are doing exactly what I said Hull should be doing, which is making their home ground a fortress. And while it's one thing to do it against the teams at the bottom half of the table who are going to be around you in the league table, what else you need to be doing is looking to perform some shots, and to do it back to back is remarkable from Preston. And I'll hold my hands up and say I'm wrong about them if they stay up at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I said last week about how good the wing backs were for Preston, Paul Valentin and Thierry Small, and they've proven me right again because it was another brilliant performance from the pair of them. I think as Majic goes without saying now is an established goal scorer in this division, and he looks like he's having the start to what could be his best season yet in this league. Just fingers crossed for Preston they can keep hold of him, because I know there's been a fair bit of interest in him, especially after his flying start to the season. I think for me as well, another shrewd bit of business for them. Daniel Iverson has looked really, really good in his opening couple of games on his return to North End. But overall, it's just a very, very good start for Preston, and a start that no one expected. I think if you told Preston fans at the start of the year they'd have 7 points from games against QPR, Ipswich and Leicester, I think they would have probably called you very, very silly and think you're on an absolute mad one. So fair play to them. As far as Ipswich go, I mean, I just don't really understand. I'm looking at this team now, and there's so much quality in this Ipswich side. I mean, starting with the front four of Jaden Philogene, Sammy Schmodix, Jack Clark, and George Hurst at this level should be more than enough to win you games of football. I think maybe striker's the weak spot. George Hurst hasn't exactly been a world beater at this level ever, really. He's always been okay. But, you've got Sammy Schmodix in there, who was the top scorer the last time he played in this league. And he just looks like he's struggling massively in this Ipswich side. So I don't really know where the buck stops with this Ipswich team. Is it the players? Do you start questioning Kieran McKenna? Because obviously, this is one of the highest rated coaches in England, let alone the division. I think me and Elliot, when we did our pre-season manager rankings, both put him first, and comfortably first as well, without really any competition. So you wonder where the buck has to stop with Ipswich here. Is it the recruitment? Is it the players? Or is it, in fact, the manager that we have to start questioning?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of fans start questioning McKenna. I've seen a lot of Ipswich fans already showing concern about going back down to League One again as well, if this is going to be a trend the way they're performing. I don't put them in a boat of having to worry about that. But again, coming from the person who told Preston they should worry about League One football next season, I'll maybe hold my hands up and say Ipswich maybe do worry about League One football next year. But yeah, this league's unpredictable, as we know, and like we said, Sheffield United are showing that, and teams like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have to worry about that. There is far too much quality in this Ipswich side to be anywhere near considering that, I think. But as you said, I also predicted teams like Norwich to be in the playoffs. So again, don't take my opinion too seriously. But yeah, I think I'm just wondering where you question with this Ipswich side, because there's goals in this team. I don't know if George Hurst is the answer. I feel like they could definitely do with a striker before the end of the transfer window, and I don't see any other weak spots in this team. So I've got to assume that's what they're looking for, because, as you said, you could rely on Schmodix maybe, because, he's got goals at this level. Clark and Philogene, though, should be feeding plenty of goals to any striker, because that's two of the best wingers we've seen in this league together on the same team. So yeah, it's really intriguing to see why the Ipswich team is struggling so much, because there is no logical reason to explain why they have been so poor in these opening 3 games, because the squad is good. This is a well-renowned manager. So, you really have to question what is happening here with Ipswich. But as we said about Preston, don't listen to our opinions too much, because all it proves is we could be very, very wrong very, very quickly, because I don't think any of us predicted Preston to win any of their first 3 games, even after the results against Leicester. And they have won 2 out of 3 and got a decent point on the road to QPR. So I don't know about you, but I think we've probably severely underestimated Preston and maybe severely overrated Ipswich.
I think that's exactly what football's all about, though. It's all about, obviously, I'm not saying Preston heard our podcast, but it's all about those pre-season opinions and taking them on board and going out there and going, this is what people think of us. Let's prove them wrong. And I think that's exactly what Preston have done, and that's exactly what Ipswich need to start doing. Ipswich need to start thinking, everyone thinks we're a poor side, let's show them wrong. Let's show them there's no problems at this club and we can get the job done.
Yeah, there has to be a change. I don't know where it comes from, whether it's a change of personnel or a change of tactics or something. But, they've got to go Next, Derby next up again, a team that struggled to start the season. This is a game that you have to win as Ipswich, in my opinion, just to really set the record straight that you are a team that's going to be competing at the top of the table, because they have Derby, then back into Sheffield United as well. So it's two teams who have really struggled to start this season off. That should be and needs to be 6 points, in my opinion. So it'll be intriguing to see how they get on with that. But yeah, there's just big concerns for me overall with this team, just why they're struggling. But if they play to the level that they could do, I think they'll be absolutely fine and they'll be back to where we expect them very soon. As we said, a lot can change in the next couple of weeks. Should we have a couple of games before the international break as well? So, and deadline day and everything like that. So there's still a lot to happen, especially in the next couple of weeks. So it'll be intriguing to see what Ipswich do to try and improve things in the coming weeks over the transfer window. Finally, the last team we'll speak about in a lot of detail is, unfortunately for you Wrexham fans, it's your game against Sheffield Wednesday, because it all looked fine and brilliant for Wrexham, 2-0 up, cruising, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Sheffield Wednesday come back and get a point on the board away from home. I mean, Wrexham, I don't know if it was you or someone said I put them a bit too high, and I think I'm starting to regret putting them 12th, because it's safe to say it's not been a good start to the season for Wrexham.
I had them in a relegation battle, that's for sure. I didn't think they'd go down. I had them around 18th, 19th, I think. This season was always going to be a struggle. Bringing a player like Doyle in from City is going to help them massively, obviously. Okay. That deal doesn't make a lot of sense with the buyback clause that City have. It's very strange. I do wonder who's doing business at Wrexham. It's just wasteful from them, really. But I think you can argue both teams were wasteful in that when you look at the statistics from that game. Sheffield Wednesday having over 20 shots on goal, you'd expect 3 points from a team doing that. I just think, Wrexham have wasted a massive opportunity there against a team who we predicted to be the worst team in the division this season with all the issues going on. And again, we've been proven wrong by another team in this division. Okay, yes, it's the first point Sheffield Wednesday have got on the board, but they've not looked poor when they've been losing either. We said about the Leicester game after the first game of the season and how they could be proud of what they'd done on the pitch that day. So this was a huge opportunity missed for Wrexham and could be one that they come to regret at the end of the season, especially when it's at home.
Yeah. I mean, to put it blankly, Sheffield Wednesday had double the expected goals of Coventry and scored twice compared to Coventry's 7, to put a little stat into perspective for you. So as you said, it's probably a game that they should have won. But, if you're thinking as a Wrexham fan, you've been outplayed by a team that has barely any senior players on the books. Half of them haven't been paid for God knows how long. And, you've been outclassed in basically every statistical metric, and apart from the result being 2-2 rather than a defeat for them, I think they're very, very lucky to get away with a point there, which is mental to with a brace, and you're thinking it's just going to be another loss for Sheffield Wednesday, as much as most of us expected it to be. And they fight back, I believe it was Barry Bannon and Bailey Cadamatiri, however you say his name. He scored their second and it levelled it up. But so the Sheffield Wednesday side on paper isn't bad. It's not a terrible side at all. There's just obviously not a lot of depth to it because there isn't a lot of players on the books. But yeah, I just think for Wrexham that there has to be a change because there's so much money invested in this squad. Insane amounts of money. We're talking Lewis O'Brien was about 5 million. Doyle's at 8 million. Kakachi is, I think he was about 4 million. Connor Cody was 2 million. Kiefer Moore wouldn't have been cheap either. So there's been plenty, and Nathan Broader as well, of course. How can I forget that? £10 million on him as well. So I think I did say at the start of the season, the thing that's going to hold Wrexham back is the manager in choice of Phil Parkinson. And if the results keep coming like this, I can't imagine he's going to be in that Wrexham job for very long, because I don't think they're going to have a lot of patience with that kind of spend this summer.
No, and especially now they've backed him with a defensive signing. Now they've had a defensive signing from the Premier League through the door. The patience limits drop, I think. Something like that can't happen again with another player through the door, I don't think.
No, 100%. You throw Doyle into a back three of Cleworth, Cody, and Doyle, or even Doyle playing wing back where James McLean's been playing, who is miles off the level nowadays. They have to be better. They absolutely have to be. As I said, it's not a team that's brim with amazing players, but they're more than good enough to be winning games like this and not being dominated, more importantly, in a game like this against Sheffield Wednesday. It does scare me a bit as a Swansea fan going to Hillsborough on Saturday, that they've played so well in this one. Just intriguing to see how we get on there on Saturday. But I think, as you said, Sheffield Wednesday could just be happy, and I'm assuming the fans are proud of their team for how much fight and desire to try and win games that they're showing despite everything that's going on at that football club. As you said, you can't really criticise any of their results so far too badly. I think the only criticism I can give for this result is that they should have won the game. I think that's the only thing I can really say about them this week.
I think on paper, looking at the stats, you would argue that Sheffield Wednesday could have come with 3 points.
100%. So that is our review of the 6 sort of highlight games that we decided to choose from. However, we will have a look at the other games from this weekend. We'll start off with the only game on Friday night. Derby County 1, Bristol City 1. It was a Scott Twine early goal that was later equalled by Carlton Morris. Derby, finally getting something together and getting a point on the board. Bristol City, 5 points from their opening 3 games. You say they can't be too angry with that, but maybe a missed opportunity for Bristol City facing a Derby side like this that have struggled so much so far.
Yeah, Derby again proving us wrong, because we criticised for signing of Carlton Morris. It's somewhat for his age, and he's already bagged 3 goals for them. It's just about turning those goals that he nets for them into points now. I think a point at home to Bristol City is a very good point for a team like Derby, who are going to be down near the bottom. Bristol, I back for another playoff push. They're sort of looking like that. They're still unbeaten after this. So, yeah, for Bristol, another team wasting opportunity, but Derby absolutely taking opportunity and taking points where they shouldn't, really.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, I will add, obviously, Derby, nearly getting over the sort of early injury hump. Obviously, there's still players like Bobby Clark, Patrick Aguiman, etc. to come into this side. Obviously, defensive reinforcements as well still to come. But yeah, it's a good point at home against a good team. So I don't think you'd be all too angry after a pretty bad opening day and get a game after that as well. Conceding 8 goals in 2 games, but they only limited Bristol City to 1. So I think they won't be too angry with that. Next up, Charlton versus Leicester, a 1-0 win for the Foxes away at the Valley, thanks to an Abdul Fatawu goal. It was an absolute screamer of a goal. I don't know if you've seen it as well, but fair play. It was an absolutely brilliant strike from Fatawu. But Leicester, finally looking much better after getting wins, but a shaky sort of start. Obviously, they've lost to Preston as well last week. Some question marks thrown, but 6 points from their opening 3 games. I don't think you can be all too angry with that.
Yeah, I backed Fatawu to have a good season for Leicester after seeing him in pre-season. I think he's what Leicester have to build around this in the final week of this transfer window and focus the team around when they play. He will most likely finish as their top goal scorer this season, especially if they need a striker through the door badly. Leicester, I don't see them in an automatic promotion race without a striker. So Fatawu is certainly going to be the key point for Leicester.
Yeah, I think Charlton as well. I wouldn't be too angry if I was them. 3 games and they look very difficult to beat in every single one, which is what we expected of a Nathan Jones Charlton side, and they're sort of proving us right fairly quickly. But I don't think they'll be too angry losing 1-0 to a very, very talented Leicester side. But as you said, sort of Leicester just need to lean on Fatawu, because I don't think Jordan Ayew is the answer up front, and they definitely need to be shopping for a striker in the last couple of days now of this transfer window. Birmingham 1, Oxford 0, thanks to a Pike goal in the 40th minute. Not too much to say about this one. I will say, it's an expected win for Birmingham. I think most people saw them winning this one. Maybe not too many goals, and it wasn't that. But Kyogo, I will say, wasn't the best. I think after a really good opening day, he's been a bit lackluster in the games to come. As far as Oxford go, I'm a bit sceptical of their chances of survival this year. They've not been bad, and you can't complain all too much. Only losing 1-0 to what will be a team in the top 6 come the end of the year, but it's another defeat for them. Obviously, they're sat on 0 points after 3 games, so safe to say there's alarm bells ringing in Oxford after a couple of games.
Yeah, I expected Birmingham to win this one comfortably, so I think that defensive showing from Oxford is a credit to them and what they are capable of. I don't think you can fault a 1-0 loss at St Andrews, team you'd expect to be up there. I think you can still heap some criticism, not heap, but I still think you can place some criticism on Blues for not winning this one comfortably. Goal difference is vital at the top end of the table more than anything. So to only bag 1 goal against this Oxford side is a concern, especially with their front line. But credit to Oxford and their defensive capabilities, and I won't take that away from this Oxford side.
Yeah, 100%. This is one of the games that we did consider last minute changing out to be in our feature games because it is a kind of surprise, but not really. Sheffield United 0, Millwall 1. Obviously, Blades sit bottom of the table after 3 games, which I don't think anyone saw coming, with 3 defeats out of 3. But Millwall looking impressive again, had a bit of a blip away at Middlesbrough last week, but look back to their best. It was Luke Cundle with a nice movement for his goal to get them their 1-0 win at Bramall Lane. But obviously, there has to be huge concerns with Sheffield United, and particularly Ruben Sellés after what has been nothing short of a disastrous start to their campaign.
Yeah, I'd back him to be the first manager gone at this rate. He looked like a promising manager from what the times he's had. Wasn't too bad in his interim run with Southampton, I suppose. Really good manager with Reading, looked promising with Hull, and now it seems like he's got a job with some actual pressure on it, and he's not up to it.
100%, yeah. It's just not been great, has it? And, it's going to be intriguing to see how they manage that situation because as a team that you expected to be in the playoffs after just missing out last year on promotion, I don't think they're going to have all too much patience losing to these sort of games early on, 0 points on the board. I feel like he's running a very, very thin line already. And I think a couple more losses like that and he will be in serious trouble. Finally, the last game of the week was West Brom Portsmouth, and it was a 1-1 draw thanks to a Colby Bishop equaliser in the 56th minute for Pompey. For West Brom, I think you have to look at this one as a missed opportunity for 3 points against a side that's going to be in the lower end of the table, you'd expect. But Pompey, fair play to them. It's a tough place to go and get a result, and they've got at least a point out of a West Brom team that looked very, very good so far this season.
Yeah, and Portsmouth taking points where it matters as well is big. They took 3 points from Oxford on the opening day, a team you'd expect to be in the relegation fight with Portsmouth. But if Portsmouth are going to carry on like this, I don't see them being in that relegation fight.
Yeah, no, they've been really impressive. It's another decent point away from home. There's not too much more you can ask from your side against a very, very solid West Brom team. But as I said, West Brom will be concerned slightly they didn't get the result there, but I still have to speak about him again. Isaac Price looks absolutely fantastic for the Baggies and another assist in this one. So definitely happy days on that front for West Brom that he is continuing his excellent start to the year. But that is all we have for you this week from our week 3 review of the games. So thank you very much to Chris for joining me. And we will see you later in the week where Elliot, Ollie, and potentially James as well will preview the upcoming week 4 action. So thank you very much to Chris for joining me, and we will see you all next week.